Elections have consequences. That's what we're always told. And absent something disqualifying, a president has probably earned the cabinet of his or her choosing within reason. But times, they are a-changin'.
Do you think that's a fair characterization, that there's a wrecking ball in the Justice Department and it's called Todd Blanche?
Senator, I absolutely agree with that statement. And I would say that Todd Blanche was nominated not in spite of his conflicts of interest, but because of them.
He has turned the Justice Department unequivocally into a shield for the president and a sword against his enemies. He deserves to be fired.
Todd Blanche is a real lawyer. He worked as a paralegal and went to law school at night. From those humble beginnings, he rose to the Southern District of New York and to prominent law firms. And then he took on a famous client named Donald Trump. You know, the left celebrates lawyers who represent killers and all manner of violent criminals, but heaven forbid you represent politicians with whom you disagree. John Adams actually represented British soldiers accused of killing Americans. But Todd Blanche, once a registered Democrat, is paying a price for representing Donald Trump. I watched Todd in court, and I have visited with him out of court. He is a real lawyer, and being AG is a challenging job. So if not Todd Blanche, who? Who exactly is it you want, if not this man with his credentials? Joining us, former federal prosecutor Jim Trusty. Welcome. Counselor Eric Holder said he was Obama's wingman. Loretta Lynch let Jim Comey run Main Justice. Merrick Garland's DOJ conspired with state prosecutors to target Trump. Where is this newfound independence from the left coming from?
Yeah, I mean, well, hypocrisy primarily. And remember, you had a Democratic president pick his brother to be attorney general. Look, if any of these people had shown a whisper of discontent with those previous relationships you talked about, maybe they'd have some credibility. But this is typical street theater, bashing Todd. And, you know, you're talking about his resume. One of the things I liked about him, Trey, when I was kind of hearing about this guy coming on to represent President Trump, my friend was saying, you're going to like him because he's salt of the earth. He was a guy that was a paralegal at the Southern District of New York long before he became an attorney there, going to night school, you know, doing essentially two jobs. And I like that. I like the fact that he's got kind of that humble beginning. And frankly, by being around the weaponization of the Biden administration at President Trump's expense, I like that too. I think we need an attorney general who sees clearly just how deep a state it is that's out there in the FBI and in the intelligence community actively thwarting President Trump historically.
You know, Jim, what I would say to our friends on the other side of the aisle is, if not Todd Blanche, who do you want? I mean, who would they vote for? I mean, they would actually find something wrong with Clarence Darrow. The truth of the matter is, they're not voting for whoever the president puts up for AG no matter what.
Yeah, I think Atticus Finch would lose on party lines, you know, just like you said about Clarence Darrow. There's nobody that's going to pass the litmus test. But that's how you know it's insincere, ultimately. You know, they know that the attorney general is a political appointed position where he's going to have loyalty, not necessarily just to the president as a person, but to the president's policies at DOJ. And we're at a pivotal time. You know, you listen to President Trump the other night, and yeah, a lot of the speech was about Chinese interference, but a lot of the speech was about just seditious behavior by people that are in American institutions like the FBI and the intelligence community. I mean, to me, that is such a wake-up call that's so overdue for people to realize there's an arrogance, there's a cultural rot that is involved in some of these institutions. And so far, what I've seen is Todd and Kash Patel over at the FBI have been willing to take that on and expose it and find the burn bags full of documents that show an FBI that was geared up against their own president.
All right, Jim, you and I can't speak for you. It was the best job that I ever had. I loved being a prosecutor. How do we get back to the old days when politics was never discussed at the U.S. Attorney's Office, or can we? And then my follow-up question would be, how much of what we're going through now is policy-driven versus personnel? Like, I mean, we've had bad arrests ever since we've had arrests. We've had bad search warrants. We don't change the policy just because the personnel are abusing what we've given them.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's nothing to attack in terms of the president's law enforcement priorities. When you talk about going after gangs, illegal aliens, fentanyl, and there's been great successes already. Now, of course, standing up an entire division to go after fraud and finding out the scope of the fraud's crazy. So substantively, there's no reason to think there's anything wrong with the policies that are at the Department of Justice. But there is just this institutional kind of arrogance or rot that we're seeing more and more exposed from law enforcement at the FBI, from DOJ, and that's a character issue. That's people. That's people that have the arrogance to think they know better than President Trump. And I don't know that many or all of them could ever get prosecuted. A lot of this stuff is going back 10 years, and you know how the statute of limitations works. And even with an aggressive prosecutor, you've got to find things within the law rather than being creative like a Jack Smith. But I think at the end of the day, there's room for history to judge people harshly on moral grounds. And there's a lot of people just crying out for that. We're saying they're running their own undercover government or their own shadow government. That's just outrageous to hear that in law enforcement circles. So again, you need people that are not going to be Chris Wrays or Jim Comeys that are there to kind of cozy up to the New York Times. You're going to need people that are willing to make some heads roll and expose exactly where all the nooks and crannies of corruption are within that institution.
The power to arrest and indict should make the person more humble, not more likely to abuse those powers. It should make you humble to know that you can indict, arrest your fellow citizens and ruin their reputations. It should not empower you to go do nefarious things. But you and I are in agreement on that. Jim Trusty, thank you for your service to our country and for joining us on a Sunday night.
Good to see you, Trey.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.